What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Have a whole bunch of stuff to talk about today. Yooka-Laylee finally got a date on the Switch. It feels like we've been waiting for this game to come out, or at least give us a release date for what seems like forever. I mean, it's been on the other systems, but now we finally know. And then we also keep seeing EA. They keep digging their own grave. It's the craziest thing to watch. Now, if you do enjoy this video after you're done watching, make sure you hit that thumbs up button, guys. Let's get started. So Playtonic came out, put out a video on YouTube, and gave us the release date for the Nintendo Switch of December 14th. And now, if you kickstarted, of course, the Wii U version, you were moved to the Switch version, unless you wanted a different version. But if you had a Kickstarter backing there, you also get a code around that time. Now, preload will go up along with pre-orders December 7th, so you can at least get that all situated well before the date that it comes out, December 14th. Which is awesome. I really want as many games as possible on the Switch to do that, just because Nintendo's network can take a little while to download. Trust me, I've witnessed it yesterday with Resident Evil Revelations 2, something that took way longer than it should have, hours to download, as opposed to probably half an hour on the other systems, specifically the Xbox and the PC. Either way, it's coming out, and according to Playtonic, this is the best version of Yooka-Laylee that they've made, specifically when it comes to optimizations. Now, we did get an idea of resolution as well, because Nintendo Life did have an interview, and they found out that it's going to be 900p when docked, 600p in handheld mode. Now, of course, both of those will then be upscaled to the native resolution, so you'll get 720p upscaled from 600p, and then 1080p upscaled from 900p when docked. Now, according to Playtonic, in that interview, they have made several improvements, and the biggest part, really their priority with the Switch version, was, according to them, to deliver a smooth experience for players. So, of course, some compromises naturally had to be made, according to them, but different things like shadows have been improved, and then they've also done work with the camera, which was a big problem for a lot of people, myself included, when playing that game. So it's very interesting to see. Now, according to them, they had help from Unity, and they had help from Nintendo. So that's kind of cool to hear about. The Nintendo and Unity and Playtonic all came together to make sure that this game ran as smoothly as possible. Now, it's going to be scrutinized heavily. Trust me, Digital Foundry is going to be all over this thing, and I'm curious to see how they got this running so smoothly. Do they do things like animations are cut down to half the frame rate in the distance? Is the draw distance lowered? What is it that's making this work so well on the Switch, really compared to other versions? Because according to them, it's going to run super smooth. Now, of course, resolution has been toned down, but otherwise, it sounds like that might be it mostly, especially if the shadows are better. Now, I'm also curious if the other versions will get a patch for optimizations, considering, well, with the new version of Unity, they seem to have made some improvements. So we could see possibly the cameras worked out in the other versions, which would make that a better experience. But I'll be curious to see if they even do that, because they might just move on at this point after putting the Switch version out. Because according to them, they will also be looking into physical versions. Right now, the reason they brought out a digital version first is because they wanted to get it in players' hands as soon as possible. Now, if they went physical, we probably wouldn't see it till next year. So they will work, apparently, to get a physical version out there at some point. So this is one of those other situations, guys, where sure, you can buy it digitally now, or you can wait and get it physically, but if the digital sales aren't good enough, they might not make a physical version. Again, it's one of those situations where just buy it, I guess, physically if it shows up. Otherwise, make sure you get it digitally to begin with if you just want to play the game. Now, I did ask on Twitter, are you interested in buying it? I had mixed results. Some people were like, well, you know, I backed it on Kickstarter, so I'm getting it either way. Or maybe others were saying, yeah, I already played it. It wasn't that great. Or I saw the reviews, and I'm still going to hold off. Others were saying they were specifically waiting for it on the Switch. So, cool. This should be interesting when it comes out. I just want to see how it looks now it plays. Because it didn't run super well at times on the Xbox and the PS4. I think the PS4 ran the best. The Xbox One, I think, had some weird issues where if you played for a long time, the frame rate got weird. So I want to see what's going on here with frame rate, resolution, probably dynamic, I assume. It's going to be interesting to see. Now, we've talked about EA a lot recently, and that's mostly because they've come under fire heavily for their loot boxes in things like Battlefront 2 and Need for Speed Payback, and the fact that mainstream media picked that up, and it's really affects sales of that game. Battlefront 2 has not done well at all compared to expectations, and we finally got more information about Visceral Studios, and it's exactly what we thought. I don't know why they kind of danced around the idea of this, But it tends to be that the reason EA wanted to close something like Visceral Studios because it's not really falling in line with their business strategy, which is really get as much money as they can out of any one game that comes out, because they don't want it to be strictly single player. They want to jam multiplayer and, of course, any microtransactions they can into every single game that they are doing. Something that Take-Two apparently is also going to be doing. Things like Red Dead Redemption, expect massive multiplayer and expect massive microtransactions. So here we are now, and during an investors meeting, Blake Jorgensen kind of came out and said this. It was a much more linear game that people don't like as much today as they did 5 years ago or even 10 years ago. And that was specifically when talking about the Star Wars game that Visceral Studios was working on. Now, of course, we do know that it was apparently lining up similar to, like, say, a linear style of an Uncharted game. Maybe a Last of Us, for example, a very cinematic style, big story going along with it, and it was going to be more of a ride that you kind of do maybe once or twice, and then that's about it. But it a lot of times, if it's highly polished, generally it's worth the $6 admission because of that. It doesn't necessarily need to have these big multiplayer games, right, all the time. I feel like if we had too many of those, we'd never move on. Sometimes I like to sit down, play through a game that has a great story with great characters and a really nice looking world to a degree. I mean, yeah, it's linear. It doesn't need to be open world all the time, and I like to have the choice. Why can't we have both? Why can't we have an awesome experience that's completely worth the $60 price tag, and then we can also have our big multiplayer shooters or big open world multiplayer adventure games that we can dive into as well. I don't think we have to just eliminate the completely linear games from the equation. One, I have a feeling those are cheaper to make and really maintain than something like this big open world multiplayer style game. It's a shame, but yes, that does seem to be what happened here. They closed down that studio, and that game was handed off to different studios because it wasn't falling in line with what they want, which is a place to jam multiplayer, microtransactions, and then kind of keep that game alive for a couple years. Now, while we're on the topic of EA, let's talk about their stock that has dropped massively. Now, this isn't a time for that to be happening. We're into the holidays, their big release just happened with Star Wars Battlefront 2. You would expect at this time that their stock would be rising or at least leveled. It certainly wouldn't be dropping at this point, except, well, Battlefront 2 has not been met with favorable reviews. It's only been met with heavy criticism around, well, what happened with EA and what people perceive to be mass greed, adding in microtransactions that heavily affect the gameplay overall and the progression system. So what happens? Well, the stock falls, and since Battlefront 2 has come out, about $3 billion worth of stock has been wiped. Now, this was reported on CNBC. Again, mainstream media attention to this game, to this situation, to EA. And the spotlight is just following them everywhere in mainstream media. They know they are completely attacking at this point. And yeah, they go over this. Yes, their stock has fallen. But as Daniel Ahmed has pointed out at this point on Twitter, the last time it was this low was, well, July 2017. So it's not like this massive big story that they're showing. However, EA is losing money. Yes, right here with their stock dropping at a time where it shouldn't be. After a big release like this and they put out some awesome numbers about how it's selling, it should be doing pretty well. However, expectations are not being met, and that's probably what's going to be the case unless they start selling this thing for like $20. Don't expect those big expectations to be met, which means they will have to change their model. Whenever microtransactions go back in, expect another big uproar, right? Especially if it's not just cosmetics, which they touched on that as well during this investors meeting, saying they can't break canon because, of course, with Disney, they go through everything cosmetic because it has to line up with the universe. So they're in trouble. They're tied pretty much. Either they put these microtransactions back in that affect progression, and then everyone gets mad, and then they don't sell that well, or they go through the long and process of dealing with cosmetics in Disney, making sure everything is to canon, and that's not going to be as easy a process, I think, what a lot of people believe it to be. I don't know what to tell EA at this point. They're not in a good place. If you went back 5 years ago to now, much better place 5 years ago to now. It's crazy how fast the gaming world can really change. Next up, let's talk about that Mario cereal. I put out a video for Rumor Wave where I talked about it. It showed up on that website that had a very clever name, by the way. It showed up on the website, and they talked about how they did a bunch of detective work, found this image. Apparently it's legit, and well, it turns out it appears to be legit because now it's showing up in Target's inventory on Brickseek. Now, if you don't know, Brickseek is a place you can go and you can see if things are in stock. People use it a lot for the NES Classic, the Super Nintendo Classic, and now the Switch. And what it does is it searches their database, their inventory, and it'll tell you how much they have in stock at places like Target, Walmart, and other retail locations. And yes, the Mario cereal, while it's not showing any in stock, is now showing up with a price of $3.14. Now, we now know it's probably real. It wouldn't show up in Brickseek. It wouldn't show up in Target's inventory if it wasn't. And now the fun part. How do we get one? Because more than likely, it's going to sell out and it's going to show up on eBay for a lot of money, right? It's $3.14 here. It's going to show up on eBay for $30 minimum. So hopefully there are quite a few of these out there and it's not a situation where it sells out like crazy, because I think a lot of people would like to get one, probably not because of cereal. Let's be real. People aren't going to go out and be like, oh, this cereal looks good. They're going to go out because it has the amiibo functionality and it has that collector's feel to it, right? You want to get it, maybe put it on your shelf and never open it, and you just have just really stale cereal, and in the future, maybe take the box, the cereal out and just keep the box. I don't know, but either way, it's gonna be very interesting. No release date yet. We just know it probably exists and appears to be, at least right now, $3.14. And our last bit of news, let's talk about Paladins. Now, a lot of people have played this game. It's a free-to-play game. You can get on, I believe it's on Xbox and PlayStation and the PC at this point. It's kind of like Overwatch, except it's free to play. Of course, you have different heroes that you pick from that have different abilities, and you kind of really battle it out in some kind of objective-based match type. But it's very similar to Overwatch. Now, what's very interesting is, according to a website here by the name of Smite Data Mining, it looks like in a recent update, there may be some Switch configuration files that have been added in now. Specifically, they cite Switch engine config files, I guess maybe to work with the Nintendo Switch. There's no official announcement or anything right now, at least. However, we have heard of them looking at the Switch, talking about it in interviews when people ask them, saying, oh, we're evaluating it, we're looking at it. It could happen. Nothing really, set in stone, like we're definitely going to the Switch. But now we're seeing an update here to their open beta, according to them, open beta 62, that now adds that to the mix here with Switch engine files. So it could be interesting. I don't know. See, a lot of people are curious about how this would work because it's free to play with like microtransactions. However, Arena of Valor is technically the same way, and Nintendo is all about that game. So now I'm really curious how this is going to work out. Is this going to be just a straight up free-to-play game, one of many probably that start going to the Switch? And would that be welcomed? I feel like a lot of people on the Switch would like to have free-to-play games just as an option, but you have to be careful because if you start laying a ton of them on there, it will flood the market so fast, like to the point where we are with Steam now, where Steam is so flooded that it's just hard to find anything. So I hope it doesn't get to that point where there's just so many games on there, it starts kind of looking like free-to-play games. It kind of looks almost like a cell phone, right? I like the idea of a closed-off environment for these consoles, and I hope Nintendo is definitely picky about what they let on there, as we've seen so far, because so far it's only helped the system. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for Newswave today. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, helps us out in the search algorithm, and of course, subscribe if you like gaming news in the morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, every weekday morning. We are here with gaming news, and definitely let me know what you guys think about any of the stuff we talked about today, especially Yooka-Laylee on the Switch. I'm trying to figure out where people fall on this, because at this point we know it's coming out in roughly 2 weeks. Now, were you going to be buying it, or have you been waiting for Yooka-Laylee, or have you already bought it maybe on another system because you had no idea when it was coming out on the Switch? It's been a little while, and maybe you played it, or maybe you got turned off by the bad reviews and you're just like, nah, I'll get a hat in time, or I'm too busy with Mario Odyssey. That's another thing that's not helping the situation. Is arguably the best platformer ever made is right now it's on the Switch, so people might get that instead of Yooka-Laylee, or just not care about Yooka-Laylee. It's very, very interesting. And then, of course, let me know what you think about EA. Do you think there is a place for single-player, linear-style games? Like, think of something in this case. We see Persona, right? Persona is pretty much that. You play through it, you enjoy it, you move on. Is there still a place for those kind of games? Or is EA's business model correct in that, well, everyone needs these big multiplayer, big expansive games, or they're not going to feel like they got their money worth? Let me know what you guys think. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.